So when people become addicted, sometimes we think that there's never going to be anything else for them. But that's not true. Recovery is a reality. And in every successful recovery, you need the consequences that motivate people to get into recovery, but you also need the good stuff, the hope, the positive things in life that keep you moving forwards.
I was sentenced to a year in Sauk County, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. So about halfway through my sentence, I found out that I was going to be an aunt. And I will never, ever forget getting that phone call. And I knew it was over. Before that, I was pretty sure that I was gonna be done using. I really wanted to stay clean and to keep my family. But when my brother told me that, it was done, because I had to be in his life.
Through the drug court program here in Dane County, who kind of kept me accountable, and you know, they kind of gave me a deal that if I would show up there and go through kind of their process and take drug tests and go to treatment, that they would not send me to jail, basically. And I was excited about that, you know, so I gave it a shot. It wasn't a short journey for me, and it wasn't an easy change, and I had to learn a lot of things about myself and the people around me. And so I've been sober for 5.5 years or so.
I think 2 days after I got out of the hospital, I went to see my therapist, who I'd been seeing for a while, but I was never honest with her about my using. So when I went and saw her, she was like, here's treatment centers, this is what we're doing session, you are calling them. And that's when I called Connections, and I was willing to at least go there and try it. So when I got there, I was terrified. I remember when Crystal came out the first time, I was just about to pick my stuff up and run, just kidding.
He's a pretty insightful person, naturally had many strengths, but really struggled with depression and overall pretty isolated. Once he found recovery, he really found his voice and was able to be open and honest with the people in his life in a way he never has been able to. And because of that, the people in his life were able to support him like they maybe haven't before.
Along with Crystal, I would say really listening to the people in the group and hearing people who had a year plus sober, how their lives had just changed completely drastically, and in ways that I didn't think were possible for me. You know, I was okay, I'll try this, maybe a month, maybe 2. And then at 3 months sober, things really started changing for me. I got a job, which was the first job I had had in a year.
I attend therapy. It's not traditional therapy though. It's more modern, and she made it worth my time because I've been in so many other therapists and stuff like that, so many, and none of them worked for me. I was ugh, I can talk to my friends and get the same, you know what I mean? But she made everything clear, so I could understand, so I could map out in my brain, okay, this is because of this, you're feeling this because of this. And it just made sense, and it gave me hope because I finally understood what on earth was going on. Because now, am I still put in some situations that I was back then? Oh, for sure. They don't go away. The world doesn't stop. But now, because I have the emotional skill set, because of my therapist, I can now deal with that safely, calmly. I know what to do. I know how to handle myself. And even in situations I didn't know how to before.
I spent 2 months in jail in Dane County, and that was 2 months of clean time for me. I started going back to church while I was in there, and revisiting believing in God again, and obviously seeing my family. So I ended up getting sort of a sentence that put me into a inpatient treatment, which was at Hope Haven. Then I also decided that since I was homeless before I went into jail, I was homeless when I got out of jail. You know, my daughter's with my parents, so there's no me living with my parents at this time. I cannot live with my daughter. So I found what is called the Pathway Home, and that is a faith-based Christian sober living facility for men and women at different households. But there's a women's house, and that's where I moved into. Got a hold of them through my counselor at ARC, and then they still do run a Pathway Home. It's still open for people as young as 17, I believe, to go there to have a faith-based sobriety.
I box. You know, I'm a professional boxer. I started boxing when I was 15, actually. You know, I went through the amateurs and, you know, did amateur boxing for a while, and then just until recently, you know, went up to the professional paid ranks. And, you know, I ain't trying to win a world title or, you know, nothing. It's just something that's fun for me, and it takes up a lot of time, you know, to get ready. And
I am in a healthy relationship for 8 months now. I'm my second year in school to be a substance abuse counselor. I'm like excited about it, to be able to help people in that way and to be able to be in the professional chair but still have the background and the understanding, the empathy to know and to understand what these people are going through.
Erin's house has been a major part of my journey. I lived there for a year as a resident, moved out, moved back in for another year as a live-in house mentor, and I continue to stay involved with them because I think it's a wonderful organization. There's a great group of guys that are there now that I stay connected with, and you know, we meet every Sunday and talk about, you know, life stuff and stuff with the guys that are living there at the house. And you know, obviously living there for a while, I've been through a lot of stuff there, and there's challenges that go along with living with people that are in recovery, and you know, they're not always easy, and so dealing with some of that stuff is cool, and I can provide an outside perspective there.
I started playing hockey, which is like, has been a tremendous go-to for a lot of my emotions that I don't know how to deal with. It takes up a lot of time. So yeah, eventually things just started changing in such drastic ways that I was like, all right, you know, I'll keep going for a little bit. And it was probably about like 6 months sober. I was like, I never want to use drugs again. Like, I don't even want to smoke weed again. And so now I have like almost 14 months sober. So yeah.
now where my hope comes is my kids. I got 6 kids and 1 on the way. And my girlfriend that I'm with, she has 3 kids. So we'll have 10 kids. For me, that's where the hope is. You know, even when I was young, I remember they say, you're the future. You're the future. You're our future leader. You know, this way with how my kids are raised, you know, will affect, you know, their future.
I was able to actually find more stepping stones through doing these good things. You find more successful stepping stones at the same way that you found the negative ones when you were living in the street and living the drug life. You find those negative stepping stones. You do find those positive stepping stones when you're doing the right thing. And I was actually able to connect with a social worker that worked with me to gain custody and placement back of my daughter, staying in touch with my lawyer, getting an apartment that I still have, you know, now 6 years later almost. I'm very happy with my life now. I have gone back to college. I have, you know, had another son with someone who's not using drugs. Pay my bills on time. You know, I have 2 jobs, you know, been at for a while, and I'm just generally a successful person.
A big thing for me is cars. I enjoy cars, and I enjoy, you know, working on cars and you know, pushing the limits of cars and motorcycles, and so that's something that I enjoy, and that I you know, think if I wouldn't have been using when I was younger, that it was something that I would gotten a little bit of a head start on. You know, I have the ability, the resources, the knowledge to kind of you know, install a turbo, or go get the car tuned, or take my motorcycle to the track, or do, you know, a whole bunch of stuff that I just couldn't do before. It wasn't feasible.
I feel like I definitely can owe credit to my parents and the people who were there, like my counselors and social workers, and going back to my church and people like that who were there for me during that struggle, especially my parents and my siblings, because they were my number one, like when I was at my worst, still being like, what can I do to help you?
My family, I have them all back in ways that weren't even there before. They're so supportive and we're all so open and close.
Pretty amazing, really, from where she was to what she's doing now. I mean, assumed a funeral was coming before anything, really. But yeah, it is pretty amazing.
It's incredible, and it's just really important to remember that you can make it, and I did.